Hello, and welcome to Sales TV, where we break down the moments that matter in modern sales and leave you, our audience, with at least one thing that will improve your performance. So today's episode is all about the critical step up from seller to sales leader. What changes? What catches you off guard? And how do you lead when it's no longer just about your number, but your people? So, before we dive in, let's take a minute to introduce ourselves properly and why this conversation, of course, matters to the both of us. Would you like to go first, Volker, or
No,
shall
no,
I?
I thought you introduced me, but no, you go first. You as a host.
Yeah. So a little bit about me. So I first entered the world of sales back in 1993 when I was selling Kirby vacuum cleaners. About 7 years doing a bunch of different sales roles, selling to kind of, consumers, Mr. and Mrs. in their homes back then, from Kirby to double glazing. But I finally broke into business to business sales around the year 2000. In fact, it was May 2000. And I really thought I'd made it. But 6 years later, I'd finally kind of figured out what I needed to do in order to be successful consistently. That switch finally went in my mind, and I realized, I needed to care more about the value that I was delivering rather than, whether or not my customers liked me. Anyway, fast forward to today, 25 years in B2B sales, 12 or so years in leadership. And now I've developed a methodology that helps both salespeople and sales leaders develop conversations at scale with their target audience, a social led approach. But anyway, enough about me.
Great.
Volker, let's hear from you.
Yeah, I was just thinking, how long have I been in sales? If I can top it, but I can't. So you clearly must be older than me. I
Well,
did
we've
my
got
first. Sorry, go
similar
ahead.
ages, maybe.
Sorry.
Similar. We've got to be similar ages, no? I don't
I
think
don't
I've
know.
ever.
I'm 48. I'll happily talk about that.
Okay. Well, I'm 51.
Yeah. So you probably have about 3 years more experience than me. I mean, in Germany, you go to university much longer, and if you're like me, you go to German university first and then come to the UK to finish your degree. But
Okay.
that's maybe for a different episode. So I started in sales, actually. So I was just thinking about that. Probably in 1999, when I dropped out of German university, funny enough, I did an internship with HP in sales and really, really enjoyed it. But then I went back to uni and properly entered sales in 2004 in a telemarketing role. So 2 hours call time, 100 calls a day. That was my target, smashed them. Earned shitloads of money in my first year. I always say that, not to brag, right? But I was on 18K base or 17K even at the time. My OTE was 26, but I earned over 40 grand in my first year. So clearly I was doing well, which was great. So I enjoyed sales. And like most people, I never really wanted to go into sales, right? It wasn't like I went to uni and went like, oh, when I finish, I'm going to go into sales. So I just fell into it. So I moved through the ranks, B2B sales, advertising technology a lot. So tech sales, SaaS sales, led teams all the way up to CRO roles. And if I say retired, I didn't quite retire, but I went self-employed in 2019. Not to retire, but to focus more on sales leadership development. So I'm now working as a sales leadership coach, executive coach, mentor, and work as a fractional consultant. So working with start, scale-ups to help them with their go-to-market strategies and what they're doing. What's your secret? Sorry, we just got a message there. Thank you, Ayesha. I much appreciate that. You don't have to say that I'm looking younger than Alex, but
I'm sure she was talking about me. So.
she must have.
Yeah.
Or the person of your background, right? So I'm now working self-employed and enjoy that much more. Helping others, supporting others. That's really where my strengths and my passion lies as well.
Nice. And we met it feels like we met maybe 3 or 4 years ago,
Yeah, I
around
was
that
just
time.
during lockdown. So, I mean, we can go by doc years because Arnie is 3 years now. So it must have been 3 to 4 years ago. So for everyone wondering who Arnie is my little miniature sausage dog.
Yes.
But I only have one, whilst you have, you have a
6.
whole.
I have 6. Yeah, that's right. We were talking tattoos and sausage dogs,
Yeah,
if I recall.
that's
You
right.
I think you'd had recently had a tattoo, or you were considering a new tattoo. We'd
Yeah,
done
I mean,
a post about
let's talk
sausage.
tattoos.
Yeah,
You can't see any. You can see the ring here.
yeah. There we
So
go.
in 2020, I could take my shirt off now. In 2020,
That'd be a different show, Volker.
I know. It's a Chippendale sales show.
Yeah, yeah. If only.
Yeah, in 2020, I got my first tattoo. So I never had a tattoo until lockdown hit. So it was literally the first week of lockdown when I went like, I always wanted to get a tattoo, and I want to get a tattoo that says "fall down 7 times, get up 8," which is a Japanese proverb.
Yeah,
And
nice.
lo and behold, in June 2020, I think it was, I got my first tattoo on my lower arm. And I then, yeah, as I say, the rest is history. I got a mandala here, and then I'm covered now, basically. So,
Yeah,
and within 5 years, I'm completely covered, and I run out of space now, and I don't know what else to do. So,
yeah, yeah,
and I don't want to do my neck yet. So maybe that's next. But
yeah. I do love that. So your first tattoo was fall down 7 times, get up 8 times.
yeah,
Yeah.
like never
Isn't it?
giving up.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't have that tattoo, but it's
Yeah,
funny. I had a tattoo when I was 17,
yeah,
and one, and it hurt so much. I told myself, whatever you do, never
yeah.
forget this pain. Never, ever, 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 ever have another tattoo. Anyway,
Where
in
was
my
your first
40s,
tattoo that it hurt so much?
yeah.
Can you say?
It was on my back. I just
Okay.
can't stand my back. And so when I was 40, then I had my first sleeve,
Yeah,
and a little bit like you, there's a story behind the tattoos, and I was
yeah,
planning it for quite a few years, and it fall down 7 times, get up 8 implies you've been through some stuff over the years.
yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. But it was also a little bit like, it was my mantra in COVID, right?
yeah,
Because I just went self-employed in the summer of 2019. So it was all about, building my own business, right? Getting things off the ground. And then come COVID, because I worked as a consultant, I was the first one out, right? I literally didn't have any income for a few months.
yeah,
So I'm like, you can either go like, solid, I go back to full-time roles. And to be honest, I had some interviews as well. And people went like, why are you applying for these roles, Volker? You're overqualified. I said, I know, but I think that's what I should be doing. And one of the guys who interviewed me, I don't know if he's listening, but he went like, Volker, don't, just carry on. The world will be normal, and and you just have to believe, right? And obviously that's what I do a lot with my coaching clients now as well. So taking my
yeah,
own medicine, but yeah, it's just always carries on. And I just started pedaling harder, and off we went.
yeah.
Um,
Nice.
great. Whoever said great to see you again, Volker. Good to see you too. Unfortunately, I can't see who it is, so it just says LinkedIn user. But good to see you again as well.
Yeah. Yeah, drop your name in as well.
Yeah,
Hopefully all the chats are coming through.
yeah,
So yeah, before we get into the crux of the conversation
yeah.
today, I learned a fun fact about you before we went live.
Oh
I
dear, which one?
well, not that you had long hair, but actually that you were in the Navy. I never
Yeah,
knew that, and I didn't
yeah,
realize in Germany it was compulsory,
yeah.
even at our age.
Yeah, so I think I don't know when it did stop. So obviously, my generation still had to do 10 months, which was quite short in comparison. So if I compare to my dad's generation, so he was in the Air Force. I want to say late 60s. So he had to do, I think, 18 months,
Mm,
whilst I only had to do 10 months. It's not compulsory anymore, although like any other country at the moment in this given climate is thinking about reintroducing it. But yeah, I was saying, it's been a while, but it's it helps you, it shapes you, right? We talked before we went live. Obviously, we talked about what does it do to leadership? What did you learn? I also recently saw a reel on Instagram I was talking about, because they showed the old beds and the old cupboards that I used to have, and they showed an ashtray, and they go like, "Oh, you used to be able to smoke in the what do you call it, barracks?" Yeah. Whilst nowadays you're not allowed to smoke anymore. You have really comfy beds and proper locks on your cupboards. So that was different, right? But yeah. So that's another 10 months of my life, right? And another 10 months of experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. So this is who LinkedIn user is.
Tamuras. Yeah, has been a while.
Yeah.
Anyway,
right. So the format for today, we've got a series of questions that we've created that we think you as the audience will like, whether you're thinking about stepping into sales leadership or whether you've stepped into sales leadership and you're perhaps going through working through some challenges to kind of find that place where you're performing, your team's performing. But even though we've prepared a few questions for ourselves, please, we encourage questions from the audience. So just drop any questions you've got in the comments section against the post where you're probably watching this on LinkedIn Live. But without further ado, how do you want to do this, Volker? Should we just ask ourselves the question? Do you want to go in any particular order?
We can start with the first question, but we can go in any particular order. I mean, I have my cheat sheet here just in case, my preparation sheet. But actually, just this morning, I did a session on LinkedIn Live as well about accidental leadership. And I used the example that a lot of us fall into leadership, right? Without necessarily wanting to, or kind of like being prepared. And which is why I really enjoy working with sales leaders, first-time sales leaders for sales coaching, and work through that, right? Because you're coming from a essentially, let's say, small group of people you worked with, and once of a sudden you get promoted. So all your mates, where before you were sitting with them at lunch, you were sitting there and going like, "Oh yeah, the sales manager is shit, and that is not great, and the company is rubbish." Once of a sudden you're sitting there and going like, "I have to manage these people, the people that I was friends with. Can I still be friends with them? And how do I have to react?" And then you're taking on this role, and you're like, "Do I really like it or not?" And what I said this morning, anyway, I always wanted to go into management. Actually, an embarrassing fact. See, there are lots of facts that are coming out today.
Yeah.
My first, not my first, but one of my first jobs I applied to after my undergraduate degree was for management position. And they said, "Volker, we want you as an engineer. We want you to work for us. And you can move into management once you get some experience." Yeah. And I'm like, arrogant, ignorant. I'm like, "No, I want a management position. I don't want to work as an engineer." So little did I know what it actually means to be a manager then. And no one tells you. And it's still true when you get promoted. No one takes you by the hand and says, "As a manager, this is what you have to do." And I literally just had a coaching client yesterday where we discussed that, where he, things like expenses, or what am I allowed to do? How do I best, work with the people I just manage and tell them they can't be promoted? What am I allowed to ask my manager? And one of the first advice I was giving, I was like, "You know what, talk to your manager and say, can you give me a hand? Can you tell me, clearly I'm a first-time manager because you just promoted me. It doesn't come with 12 months training beforehand. But can you give me feedback, real-time feedback, when you see me managing? What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong?" Anyway, I talked a lot. What about you? When you were in your first sales leadership role, how did that happen?
I think I was quite lucky, really, because I was an individual contributor for 11 years.
All right.
The first 6 were in business to business, this is the first 6 were, I was underperforming. I just couldn't
Yeah.
find a way to perform. But on that 6th year, it started to click, and so I then enjoyed 5 years of kind of high performance. I was given an opportunity. I was working in the UK at the time. I was given an opportunity to relocate to Australia to kickstart sales within the business that I was in at the time, who relocated me. But it was quite short-lived, 7 months. We thought it was going to be permanent, but
Yeah.
for a number of different reasons, one of which my wife's mum wasn't very well, we
Right.
decided to come back early. And thankfully, my manager had I say thankfully my manager was able to rehire me.
Yeah.
Now, I've missed out one important piece of information. Before I left for that role, because I had to move under a different manager, I said to my boss, if you let me go, I'll do 2 things for you. I'll hit my number before I leave, and I'll hire my replacement. And so he
Right.
was like, okay, deal. So when I came back sort of after 7 months, this move that was supposed to be permanent, he said, well, first he said, there's no room. We're full. And then secondly, he said, let me see what I can do. And so he created a role for me to move into a management position to run
Yeah.
the enterprise team that I was in. And I was quite lucky because I considered him a mentor. And so, he not only promoted me, but he worked very closely with me to help me transition. And it took me about 2 years, I'd say. It took me about 2 years before I started to feel comfortable as a manager, but aspiring leader. I really did want to be a leader rather than a manager and try and inspire others. But yeah, it took me 2 years before I started to feel like I was actually making an impact and helping others. Yeah. So, question: What was your biggest shock when stepping into a sales leadership role for the first time?
Yeah. So that's the first question, right? The first official question, which kind of we just
We've only
answered,
got
right?
there. It's only taken us 18 minutes.
No, but it's we already talked about it more or less, right? I think
Yeah.
the biggest shock is shit. You have responsibility once of a sudden, right? You're managing a team of friends, and of course you have the responsibility for a bigger target. What normally happens, and what you explained, and I'm not saying it was the case with you, but you alluded a little bit to it as well. Really good ICs, individual contributors, right? They're good in bringing in sales, they bring in the money. That doesn't mean they're good managers or leaders, right?
Yep. 100%.
And if you say it took you 2 years, because once of a sudden you're like, my target and the team's target. How do I split my time? And then ideal case, and I know it's not always the case, often it isn't, you keep your target. On an ideal case, you don't keep your target, you just have a team target and you just manage people. But often you keep your target and get more responsibility at the same pay, and maybe you get some commission on top for the team's target. So then when it comes down to hitting your own target versus hitting the team target, you have to decide, right? You might just go like, oh, I prioritize my own target, and good for me, you don't have time to coach your team, right? So you get someone external in and say, I need someone to coach my team because I have my own target and I have my team's target. So I think that's the biggest shock for most people, and it was certainly for me. Although I've been lucky, my first sales leadership role was actually, or my first management role, I should say, was managing a marketing lady. So we moved into that role. I managed her, later on got a salesperson. So I gradually grow the team. So I wasn't like promoted out of a team to lead a team. So I could kind of cut my teeth a little bit, with just 1 or 2 people to manage, and which was quite nice. It was a very small team, and but I think that's the biggest shock, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should I ask you the next question then, or how does it work?
Well, I was gonna have a little go at answering that question
Yeah.
too, but before
Yeah,
I do,
exactly. Yeah. So what was yours then? Sorry. Yeah.
I just wanted to shout out to Susan Brown. So
Yeah.
true.
Sorry.
Why promote the best people to a
Yeah.
people manager? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
go on.
So if I can answer that quickly, I think we think we have to promote the good people, right? And we have to show them career progression if they want to or not, because we're afraid to lose them. Rather than having an honest conversation and say, actually, do you want to be an IC or do you want to be a team leader? Because for the company, sometimes it makes sense to leave them just as an IC, bring in the money and you promote someone else in as a leader. But sorry,
Yeah,
so what was your biggest shock then?
yeah. Well, sorry, and having a
Yeah.
strong leadership there to make that decision,
Oh,
because
yeah.
it's not always the right thing to do, which is promote the best performer in the team.
Yeah.
Just one of those things that happened years ago. But I think we agree it's not necessarily the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think my most difficult challenge was tackling underperformers. So
Yeah.
I was literally one of the first tasks I was given as my boss promoted me was to get rid of one of the team for underperformance. What made that very difficult is I'd recommended him. He was, you recall I agreed to find my
Yeah.
replacement. I actually recommended two people, and both of which he hired, one of
Yeah.
which I had to ask to leave when I was promoted. That
Yeah.
was hard, very hard.
Yeah.
And the other was someone else who was a peer for many years, who'd been a high performer like me as an individual contributor. I was asked to have a very tough conversation with him about changing the way that he worked and adapting to our new go-to-market strategy.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to change. And he decided, well, I'm sorry, I am the way I am. So if you don't want to accept that, then I'm leaving. And thankfully, my manager knew him very well, and it was a collaborative
Yeah.
conversation. Ultimately ended in a mutual agreement, but nonetheless, it was very tough as a junior junior leader to do that.
And to be honest, I think because I'm coaching a lot of people around that, the first time you need to let someone go, particularly if you're close to them, right? If they're a peer or someone you might have hired yourself and you made a bad hire, which happens. Letting someone go the first time, I mean, even the second or third time, it's never nice. It's never easy. And my piece of advice is don't make it personal, right? It's not about the person. It's about their performance.
Yeah.
It's, you need to turn that switch, even if, it is your best friend, someone you recommended in, you never know, right? If it doesn't work out for them, it doesn't work out. And if the numbers are not there, sorry, but it's nothing personal.
Yeah. And honesty about the performance is the best policy. Yeah.
Don't beat around the bush, like have these performance reviews, back it up in an email, make sure you speak to HR, make sure you speak to your manager, make the right decision, and make it early as well, right? I see that a lot. Oh yeah, that person recovers another 3 months, another 3 months, another 3 months. That person never recovers.
I think as long as there is clarity there and clear direction, and there has been throughout, then and it then becomes clear that individual doesn't have what it takes, isn't willing to adapt, then have that conversation early. So Susan, thank you again for this question. What's the biggest mistake sales managers make when leading a team? Now, I've got one for you.
You go first.
The the mistake I made was thinking that I could get everyone in my team performing at the same level that I used to perform at, and literally riding shotgun on every deal across the team until I I was burning out,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
But I just had this belief that I could achieve that, and mistakenly believe that, and actually, making that transition from a manager where you're sort of telling someone what to do and how to do it, to becoming more of a leader where you're getting the best out of that individual, inspiring them to be the best they can be, not the best version of me.
Yeah.
That was quite a tough transition.
And I would have said, if I say the same, right? But rescuing. It's a good old, oh yeah, I can do it better than you, right? Jumping in and doing it. One of my favorite examples of leadership roles I had was when I had an analytics team I was looking after. So I had quite a big team, and part of that were analytics guys. If I say PhD and above, right? Like smart people, a lot smarter than me, but commercially totally unaware, which is why they put me in that role to manage their managers, and then obviously they manage the team. So having management of managers is quite it's kind of like the next step up. And that experience was really, really interesting, and I really enjoyed it because I give you a simple example. So my Excel skills are okay, but then someone walks in and goes like, why don't you do a pivot table, Volker? And I'm like, oh, what's a pivot table? and starts taking my Excel sheet, literally apart and puts it back together. And I'm like, this is quite cool. And being able to deal with that as well, right? When you have a team that outperforms you, maybe not on leadership or management, but they're subject matter experts. And working with those people is I found it super rewarding. Because very smart, very clever, they pick things up. But they're also different to manage than salespeople, for instance, right? Salespeople is sometimes more clear cut because we can look at targets and numbers, right?
Yeah, indeed. What about any leadership habits or rituals or things that you did that you could rely on that perhaps had a big impact?
Leadership ritual that I can rely on. I can't see that on my cheat sheet. I have to come up with an answer now.
Number 7, isn't it? Number 7. I've changed the wording slightly.
Did you?
Yeah.
Without looking at my cheat sheet, I think first of all, I mean, I'm a big advocate. Anyone who knows me of emotional intelligence, which for me is a great toolbox, if not the biggest skill you should have as a manager and leader. Relationship building, empathy, conflict resolution. I mean, AI, emotional intelligence, covers it all. It's so important. So as a skill, that's definitely my go-to. I've always been a lenient manager. I mean, I use that example, and I don't know, I'm going to look at the cheat sheet in a minute when you answer it your way, but I once had a lady, and she came up to me and she was like, mind you, this was pre-COVID. We were all working in the office. Her commute was probably about 45 minutes to an hour. And she came up to me and she says, Volker, can I leave 15 minutes early? I need to pick up my daughter from school or, play group or whatever. And it only happens once a week, she says. And I said, no. And then she just looked at me. Yeah, wait. There's a caveat. I said, no. And she looked at me and I said, you have to leave at least 30 minutes early. I said, you cannot take the risk of actually being late for the pickup of your girl. I said, there's no way, you only want to have a 15-minute buffer, right? Get half an hour, or leave early if you want to. And she goes like, oh, don't worry, I make up the time. I said, I don't care, as long as your figures are there, right? Yeah. As long as you perform, you can leave an hour early. I don't give a shit, quite frankly. I'm not someone who sits there with a clock, right? So I think she made it to every pickup. And she also tried to make a point of sending me an email every night. She was leaving early, and I'm like, stop that, right? There's, I don't need that. For me, it's important you put family first, because if people put family first, and then they're happy in their private life, if you like. I mean, not that I can sort everybody's private life, but they perform better at work.
100%. You're showing you care. You're empathizing with the problem or the situation that she's in, and I'm sure you had a much stronger relationship with her, and she performed better as a result, as you say.
Yeah. Was that the
Okay.
right answer? No, actually, I put something else down. But what is your go-to?
Well, there were quite a few things. I enjoyed giving feedback regularly. I love, and I still love to this day, brainstorming through problems, challenges. I do it a lot with my two sons, who are both in B2B sales now, and really
Nice LinkedIn post.
doing that. I was big on lead measures and defining the behaviors that we needed to follow as a team collectively, in terms of improving kind of the probability of our performance. But I was very inclusive with the team. And I used to love little sayings like, I'd often use the term, I'd often I'd often talk about Luke Skywalker and his mission to blow up the Death Star. This quite big mission with so many distractions, like spaceships trying to blow him up as he's trying to blow up the Death Star, and the importance of staying on target. And whatever happens, stay on target, whether that's stay on target of your, within your go-to-market strategy, or the deal you're running, or the stakeholder that you're trying to build a relationship with. So whether that went down well or not, I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if any of my old team members are perhaps watching this and they remember that. Hopefully it's a fond memory and not a traumatic memory.
I like that one, because you need to have that overarching goal, right? That Death Star or whatever it is, right, in front of you.
Yeah.
I'm not good with movies, so I'm not going to even try to attempt to make a joke around it. But whatever you have, right, have it in front of you. Remind yourself daily about it, right? Remind your team why you're doing it. I once had a team, not joking. It wasn't actually that long ago, but I printed out posters, to motivational posters for them to actually start working on acting more like a team. It was a nightmare to manage them, quite frankly. I hope they're listening. Probably know who they are. But yeah, sometimes you just wonder, right? You just wonder.
So we're a little over time, and it is a great conversation. I think we could go on and on, but let's.
We only got started. This was 2 questions of my cheat sheet.
I know. And apologies for kind of bringing us to a close, but
no, that's okay.
We're half an hour in now, or just over. Let's jump to our final question.
Okay, so I know where to look.
Then we can wrap things up. There we go. What's the biggest myth? So in your mind, what's the biggest myth people believe about what it takes to be a great sales leader?
I already mentioned that, right? That the top biller automatically makes the best sales leader, right? And I mentioned that earlier. I think that's probably the biggest myth. Enabling others, not outperforming them. So you have to be humble and empathetic, and you have to almost take a step back as a manager. I always say that the boat rises with the tide, right? Like, if everyone performs, everyone does well, and it takes the manager up with it. And you're the captain of the boat, right? You're not the one, I don't know, rowing in the boat, or you're not the one putting coal on the fire, whatever analogy you want to use. And taking that step back and trusting the team. Again, it comes back to emotional intelligence, building relationships. Having that trust in the team, I think, is important.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I had the same. I had the same answer. You know, it's
Yeah.
you know, you know, the it's not necessarily the right thing to do. Just promote the individual contributor,
Yeah.
the best individual contributor. It really is about the people more than it is the numbers, because if you take care of the people, the numbers will take
Yeah.
care of themselves.
Yeah.
Um,
Agree. There's
yeah.
just a great comment there from Ayesha, hope I pronounced that correctly. Uh, prioritize their own career progression and image. And I see that day in and day out, right? Managers, they go like, oh,
Mhm.
look how great my team is. And I gave them all the ideas.
Yeah.
You know what? There's maybe slightly off topic, but if you guys have 16 minutes over Easter, if you haven't watched it yet, Brené Brown on vulnerability as a TED talk, or read her books. I read 2 of her books and she's amazing. So Brené
Yeah.
Brown, vulnerability, just drop all that bullshit, just be a good leader, praise people in your team. No, none of your managers will go to you and go like, oh, how well have you done? They all know it was a team, right? And
Mm.
that's okay. That shows that you're a good manager, right? As you said, right? If you lead a good brainstorming session and your team comes up with great ideas, tell
Yeah.
your manager that it comes from the team, because
Yeah.
that makes you a good leader.
Exactly.
You don't have to come up with ideas.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's
Yeah.
maybe one food for thought, because I mentioned that this morning as well. And unfortunately, a lot of companies now cut middle management, right? So, which means you have a target and your team's target, and you have too much to do. You don't just have time to manage, but
Mm.
we need managers that just have time to manage and develop others. And there are not enough of these
Yeah.
roles, unfortunately. And unfortunately, they're the first ones that get cut because they don't have a number associated to it, but they have a value associated to it. So, anyway, that's a bugbear of mine. So, yeah. Sorry, I
Well, and
shut up.
there's another topic right there.
Yeah,
Quantifying the value of leadership.
100%.
Cool. So thank you, Aisha. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, LinkedIn users. Thank you, Volker. It's
Yeah.
been
Thank
a
you,
wonderful
Alex.
conversation. It's felt very natural. I know we had a few questions prepared, but
Yeah.
I do like it when it's more of a conversation like
Oh,
this
yeah.
rather than a scripted approach. And hopefully the audience liked it too.
Yeah. No, thank you. And then, yeah, I try not to use my cheat sheet, so but I always have it there, right? Because you want to be prepared, but when you pitch, you need to think on the spot. So I hope I did okay.
Yeah, you
And I hope
did.
it was useful as well.
And if there is anyone out there looking for a sales leader coach like your
Yeah.
good self, where can they find you?
Just look me up on LinkedIn. It's the easiest. Obviously, I have a website called opnat.us. But yeah, just reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank
With
you.
that, have a great week, rest of week, Volker. Enjoy Easter for those celebrating Easter at the weekend. Until
Thank you.
next time on Sales TV, take care.